VCY America presents Crosstalk, a nationwide call-in program discussing issues that have an effect on our families, our communities, our churches, our nation, and our world. Crosstalk, an opportunity for you to voice your concerns for biblical principles. And now live by satellite and around the world on the internet at vcyamerica.org. Here is today's Crosstalk.
Well, good afternoon, and welcome to Crosstalk here on VCY America. Jim Schneider with you today. And folks, we're going to be talking about an issue that is one that we have had, we have known marriage since the beginning of time to be between one man and one woman. That is how God set it up in the Garden of Eden. That's how Jesus affirmed it in the New Testament. That is how certainly our whole society and structure is built. This is how America has prospered. This has been the very bedrock and our foundation. And today we are seeing an all-out attack against the Defense of Marriage Act that had been passed and signed into law by the Clinton administration. You see, before then, it was just a given. Everybody knew that marriage was between a man and a woman. And this was codified into law then and signed into law by then President Bill Clinton. And here in recent years, there has been an all-out assault, an attack against the Defense of Marriage Act, and it's taken us to a point where this Thursday morning it is being voted on in the Senate Judiciary Committee. We're going to just review a little bit backwards, and then we are going to encourage you to have handy a sheet of paper and some a pen or a pencil to jot down a number of phone numbers that we're going to provide for you today for the Senate Judiciary Committee members who are casting votes this Thursday morning on the repeal of DOMA. But it is not just this law that is under attack, legislatively speaking. It's also under attack in the courts. Yesterday, the Washington Times carried a story, and the headline is this: Gay marriage backers making a full court press. Efforts to repeal the 1996 Defense of Marriage Act are in full swing as a major lawsuit advances, another lawsuit filed, and a Senate panel meets soon to consider legislation to overturn the law. Here's a quote from Mary Bonato, the Civil Rights Project Director at the Gay and Lesbian Advocates and Defenders, or GLAAD, lead attorney in Gill versus the Office of Personnel Management, said, "We are working hard to strike a blow that will end DOMA." Gill is one of several lawsuits that is filed by gay spouses who say their lives have been injured by DOMA, which defines marriage for federal purposes as the union of a man and a woman. DOMA also tells states that they do not have to recognize out-of-state gay unions. Well, GLAAD attorneys are asking that the U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals, the first U.S. Circuit, uphold the July 2010 ruling of a U.S. District Court Judge, Joseph Taro, who said that DOMA is unconstitutional. The circuit judge, folks, ruled that to say marriage between one man and one woman, that is unconstitutional. So that's been appealed now to the first U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals, who's being asked now to uphold that lower court. Separately, last week, October 27th, several members of the armed services filed a lawsuit against DOMA in U.S. District Court in Massachusetts, calling DOMA a threat to national security. They said it's a threat to national security when the military is unable to promise legally married same-sex service members that their families will be provided for their absence. Army Major Shannon McLaughlin and 15 other plaintiffs argued in their complaint that they're represented by lawyers with the Service Members Legal Defense Network and Chadbourne and Park LLP in New York City. The service members want to be counted as married for such military purposes as medical and dental coverage, housing allowances, travel and transportation allowances, visitation rights in military hospitals, survivor benefits, and the right to be buried together in military cemeteries. The lawsuit names Defense Secretary Leon Panetta, Attorney General Eric Holder, and Veterans Affairs Secretary Eric Shinseki as defendants. Eileen Lanes, the spokeswoman for the Defense Department, said, quote, "We will carefully evaluate the complaint, and we will consult the Department of Justice. In the meantime, we'll continue to follow the law." So we've got one lawsuit that was filed previous, now by GLAAD. Then we have the second lawsuit filed last week by the group here through the Service Members Legal Defense Network, saying the Defense of Marriage Act is a threat to national security. That's prong number 2 in the attack. Prong number 3 is a piece of legislation that had been drafted. It was released earlier this year, March 16th. It is S598. Write it down. S598. That's a Senate bill. The U.S. Senate, 598. And folks, it just turns my stomach when I see this act is cited as the Respect for Marriage Act of 2011. It is nothing of the sort. They're calling it right in the bill, they're calling it the Respect for Marriage Act. And yet, when you read its purpose is to repeal the Defense of Marriage Act and to ensure respect for state regulation of marriage. That's what S598 is. They're calling it the Respect for Marriage Act of 2011, but it does anything but that. Marriage, well, dictionary definitions used to let us know that marriage is between a man and a woman. This was introduced on March 16th, 2011. On that day, senators from across the country stood with local legally married couples, according to the press release from Senator Dianne Feinstein, who authored the legislation, standing with what they called legally married couples who've been denied the benefits and protections of federal law to announce legislation that would repeal the Defense of Marriage Act. I'd like to take you back to that little press conference in which Senator Feinstein made her announcement.
I'm very pleased to announce that this afternoon my co-sponsors and I will be introducing a bill to strike the law commonly known as DOMA, the Defense of Marriage Act. Today, in fact, there are tens of thousands of legally married same-sex couples in the United States, and more than 18,000 in my state of California alone. These couples live their lives like all married people. They share financial expenses, they raise children together, and they care for each other in good times and in bad, in sickness and in health, and until death do them part. But here's the rub. Right now, because of DOMA, these couples cannot take advantage of federal protections available to every other married couple in this country. For example, they can't file joint federal income taxes and claim certain deductions. They can't receive spousal benefits under Social Security. They can't take unpaid leave under the Family and Medical Leave Act when a loved one falls seriously ill. And they can't obtain the protections of the estate tax law when one spouse passes and wants to leave his or her possessions to another. So it's important that we right this wrong. The bill we are introducing today is very simple. It would strike DOMA in its entirety. It is the same as the House bill that is introduced this morning. It would ensure that the protections of our federal government our government affords married couples are finally afforded to all.
As our senator said, Jeannie and I have been together 22 years. We've shared a busy life, raising a son, juggling careers and family life. And in 2008, we were legally married. And it was one of the most joyful days of our life. Our love and commitment was celebrated by friends and family around the country. But our marriage didn't provide us the same securities that other marriages provide families. And as we get older and we own a home together and we look at Social Security, we don't have the same ways of protecting each other as we get older. And then we sit and try to figure out our taxes, and we're married in California, but we're single with the federal government. And it's confusing, it's cumbersome, and it's simply unnecessary. And so those are the tangible reasons, but there's the intangible part of my federal government not recognizing my family.
I recognize her. The love of my life for 22 years, and as Paulie said, raising our son together. And I remember when he said, when you grow up as a little kid, what you want is the right lunch and the right family. Those are the two things that a young kid wants, and that was something that he had to confront growing up, that his family wasn't quite the same, wasn't quite right. So I thank you, Senator Gillibrand, Coons, Blumenthal, and of course our Senator Feinstein. History will say your name was on this moment, and you took the moment and you made great changes and strides for all of us, so I appreciate your leadership.
There you have excerpts that took place from that press conference, that news conference that was held earlier this year in March, where Senator Feinstein making her declarations in repeal of the Defense of Marriage Act. Again, I'm just appalled to the very name that they're giving this, the Respect for Marriage Act. Well, other legislators also spoke out. Here is Senator Kirsten Gillibrand. She said every loving, committed couple deserves the basic human right to get married, start a family, and have access to all the same rights and privileges that my husband and I enjoy. Folks, it doesn't work that way. You cannot start a family in the way that she and her husband enjoy through same-sex marriage. She said, I look forward to the day when all states accept this basic principle of fairness. I will work with my Senate colleagues to end the discrimination currently enshrined into U.S. law and make marriage equality a reality for all. Senator Barbara Boxer went on to say the Defense of Marriage Act has nothing to do with defending marriage. All it does is discriminate against millions of Americans by denying them equal treatment under the law. Senator Richard Blumenthal said repealing DOMA is imperative to basic rights for our families, friends, and neighbors. DOMA is an unjust discriminatory law that denies millions of people full federal benefits and protections. Senator Dick Durbin, Illinois, this law discriminates against loving families in every state in the union, and it's long past time we correct the mistake. Here's John Kerry. DOMA was wrong and unconstitutional when I voted against it 15 years ago in 1996, and it's equally wrong and unconstitutional today. We must put an end to this discrimination, putting an end to the Defense of Marriage Act, and on and on and on these comments go. Well, folks, it doesn't stop there. This summer, as well as we're working up to the present, Barack Obama issued a statement from the White House July 19th. President Obama is proud to support the Respect for Marriage Act. But, folks, the Respect for Marriage Act does away with DOMA. It will not recognize marriages between one man and one woman. The White House said this legislation would uphold the principle that the federal government should not deny gay and lesbian couples the same rights and legal protections as straight couples. The president has long called for a legislative repeal of the so-called Defense of Marriage Act, which continues to have a real impact on the lives of real people, our families, friends, and neighbors. Earlier this month, we played right here on Crosstalk this president's speech that he gave before the Human Rights Campaign's annual national dinner. In that speech, he said, quote, I vowed to keep up the fight against the so-called Defense of Marriage Act. There's a bill to repeal this discriminatory law in Congress, and I want to see that passed. But until we reach that day, my administration is no longer defending DOMA in the courts. I believe that the law runs counter to the Constitution, and it's time for it to end once and for all. It should join Don't Ask, Don't Tell in the history books. What can you do about this? We'll have more when we come back. Be ready to jot down some phone numbers. You're listening to Crosstalk on the VCY America Network.
Back to Genesis with creation researcher Dr. John Morris of the Institute for Creation Research. Dr. Morris, what's the most important difference between man and animals?
Chris, there's a great deal of difference between man and the animals, both in anatomy and brain size and chemistry. And while there is some gross similarity, the most important difference in my mind is not physical, but in the mental and conscious areas. Apes can't think abstractly in the sense that humans can. Now, they can be taught to do certain things, but only by repetition. They don't reason in any real sense. Perhaps the most important physical difference is in their inability to speak. It's language that most separates man from the animals, the ability to communicate thought at a higher level and to communicate with our Creator. Face it, man and the animals, even the apes, are extremely different and have been so ever since the creation back in Genesis.
We'll send you the wonder of it all when you call us at 1-800-7-GENESIS. It's yours for the asking.
marriage is under attack. The Defense of Marriage Act is under attack. Concerned Women for America points out that this so-called Respect for Marriage Act, that is the legislation we're talking about that's being voted on Thursday, S-598, is deliberately deceptive. It has a deliberately deceptive name, Respect for Marriage Act, because, you know, when people say marriage, they believe it's a man and a woman. And so this is calling it a Respect for Marriage Act, and when in fact it seeks to repeal the Defense of Marriage Act. DOMA, DOMA defines marriage as we've always known it, the union between a man and a woman for federal purposes. It also protects states from being forced to recognize same-sex marriages from other states if a state chooses to do so. The most comprehensive scientific national survey to date, completed by Public Opinion Strategies in May of this year, reveals that 62% of Americans believe marriage should be defined only as a union between one man and one woman. 53% strongly agreed with that statement. More than 63 million Americans in 30 state elections have voted on constitutional marriage amendments. Around 40 million in all, 63% voted to affirm marriage as a union between a man and a woman. The Respect for Marriage Act forces states to recognize any kind of marriage, folks. This legislation that they're seeking to pass on Thursday morning forces states to recognize any kind of marriage that another state decides to sanction. It is by no means limited to same-sex marriage. Do you know there are those that are pushing for polygamy right now in states? There are those who have used the same reasons why they should be able to have pedophilia and for adults to marry children, or for relationships between humans and animals. It was introduced here in the Senate by Dianne Feinstein, Senate Bill 598. In the House side, it was Gerald Nadler of New York, H.R. 1116. But it's S-598 that is facing a vote this coming Thursday. And I'm going to provide for you phone numbers to those who are going to be voting on it Thursday. It's not the entire Senate Thursday. It is going before the Senate Judiciary Committee. The Senate Judiciary Committee is made up of a number of Republicans and Democrats who would have a Democrat majority membership on the committee because of the fact that Democrats hold the majority in the United States Senate. And I'm going to go through these phone numbers here and encourage you to jot these numbers down. And you're going to be hearing some of these from your states and also a host of other states as well, in which they make up the membership of this committee who will be casting a vote as they come together this Thursday morning to decide as a legislature, as a legislative body, this committee. The vote is taking place, let's see, I think I had the committee hearing. I'm not finding it right now, exact time it's taking place. It's not so much important as it is the fact that it's happening Thursday morning as of this point. Here are the phone numbers. The committee, first of all, you can contact just the majority office. I am going to give you two numbers for the Senate Judiciary Committee Majority Office and the Senate Judiciary Committee Minority Office. So the Democratic office for the committee and the Republican office. And then I'm going to give you the phone numbers individually for the members of the committee. The Senate Judiciary Committee Majority Office, so this would be the Democratic leadership of this committee. Their phone number is 202-224-7703. Matter of fact, folks, just for simplification, every number I provide for you this afternoon is area code 202, so I'm not going to repeat that area code every time. In addition, every number I give you has a prefix of 224. So I'm not going to give you that prefix every time. I'm going to give you the last four digits of the numbers. That'll save a whole lot of time here. The Senate Judiciary Committee, again, if you write down the 202, then 224, okay? Every number I give you starts with those six numbers. Okay, the Majority Office, 7703. 7703. The Minority Office, which is the Republican leadership of this committee, their number 5225. 5225. Okay, now here are the committee members that make up the composite of the Senate Judiciary Committee. The chair is Patrick Leahy. I'm going to go through the Democrats first, followed by the Republicans. Patrick Leahy, 4242. Again, that's the last four numbers of the number. Every number begins with area code 202, then 224. Patrick Leahy, 4242. Herb Kohl of Wisconsin, 5653. That's 5653. Dianne Feinstein of California, 3841. 3841. Chuck Schumer of New York, 6542. 6542. Dick Durbin of Illinois, 2152. 2152. Sheldon Whitehouse of Rhode Island, 2921. 2921. Amy Klobuchar of Minnesota, 3244. 3244. Al Franken of Minnesota, 5641. 5641. Christopher Coons of Delaware, 5042. 5042. Senator Richard Blumenthal of Connecticut, 2823. 2823. That's the Democratic membership in the Senate Judiciary Committee. The Republican membership includes Chuck Grassley of Iowa. His number, 3744. 3744. Orrin Hatch of Utah, 5251. 5251. John Kyle of Arizona, 4521. 4521. Jeff Sessions of Alabama, 4124. 4124. Lindsey Graham of South Carolina, 5972. 5972. John Cornyn of Texas, 2934. 2934. Michael Lee of Utah, 5444. 5444. And Tom Coburn of Oklahoma, 5754. 5754. Those last numbers were the Republican membership of the Senate Judiciary Committee. Keep in mind that entire committee will be voting this Thursday morning and casting their votes on whether to repeal the Defense of Marriage Act. They are meeting at, here it is, 10 o'clock in the morning. That's Eastern Time on Thursday. The reason we're doing this Crosstalk program today is so that you can make those calls right now. If you can't get through, you have tomorrow, you have Wednesday to get your calls into your senators or the senators who make up the committee. In addition to these numbers, folks, you can contact your own U.S. Senator. And for their specific number, you can go to senate.gov, or call the switchboard for the Senate at 202-224-3121. That's 224-3121. But they're going to be casting their vote on this coming up. Here are, so far, folks, approximately 1/3 of the Senate has signed their name on the dotted line saying, we want to be co-sponsors of this legislation. So far, signing on has been Senator Akaka, I believe that's how you pronounce his name, from Hawaii, Senator Bennet of Colorado, Senator Bingaman of New Mexico, Blumenthal of Connecticut, Boxer of California, Brown of Ohio, Cantwell of Washington, Cardin of Maryland, Coons of Delaware, Durbin of Illinois, Franken of Minnesota, Gillibrand of New York, Harkin of Iowa, Inoue of Hawaii, Kerry of Massachusetts, Klobuchar of Minnesota, Herb Kohl of Wisconsin, Lautenberg of New Jersey, Patrick Leahy of Vermont, Carl Levin of Michigan, Jeff Merkley of Oregon, Barbara Mikulski of Maryland, Patty Murray of Washington, Bernard Sanders of Vermont, Charles Schumer, New York, Jean Shaheen of New Hampshire, Mark Udall of Colorado, Tom Udall of New Mexico, Sheldon Whitehouse of Rhode Island, and Ron Wyden of Oregon. These are the 30 co-sponsors right now of this Senate bill, Senate Bill 598, S598. Now, there's a House version that's also been introduced, and we're going to defer talking about it only because there's no action going on right now of it. It's always good to let your congressman know, but keep in mind there are 128 co-sponsors in the House of Representatives that have already signed on to this legislation. 128 co-sponsors in the House. Matter of fact, they're just chomping at the bit to do so. Just this month alone, it was added by Representative Doggett of Texas, Representative Bobby Rush of Illinois, and Rick Larsen of Washington State that have all signed on this month here of October in order to have their name added to a repeal of the Defense of Marriage Act. Where's all this heading? There's some stories I want to quickly share with you here, folks, because this is not an end-all. This is a step to the next stage of the attack against marriage. Here's LifeSiteNews.com reporting that New York Governor Andrew Cuomo called same-sex marriage opponents discriminatory and anti-American last week. Do you know, if you believe that marriage is between one man and one woman and you want your state to recognize that you're anti-American? The governor, he was instrumental, of course, in passing same-sex marriage in June in New York. He was asked at a forum which arguments against same-sex marriage he found compelling. His answer? None. There's no answer from the opposition. There really isn't. Ultimately is, I want to discriminate, and that's anti-New York. It's anti-American. You can see where this is going, folks. Let's travel out to California, because there we have a lesbian couple in California who say their 11-year-old son, Tommy, who wants to be a girl named Tammy, are giving their child hormone blockers that delay the onset of puberty so that they can have more time, that they can decide if he wants to change his gender. They're using this hormone blocking therapy. And the Joel Baum, director of education and training for Gender Spectrum, reports Fox News, a California-based nonprofit group. He said this is about giving kids, their families, the opportunity to make the right decision. Critics say the treatment of this 11-year-olds they're not old enough to make life-altering decisions without changing their gender. Parents should not be encouraging them. Dr. Paul McHugh, a professor of psychiatry at Johns Hopkins University, said this is child abuse. It's like performing liposuction on an anorexic child. He said it's a disorder of the mind, not a disorder of the body. Dealing with it in this way is not dealing with the problem that truly exists. Where is this heading? Let's go to UCLA. Co-ed dorm rooms could be a reality for some UCLA students as early as next year. The move is intended to better accommodate transgender students, as some other universities already have, including Berkeley and Stanford. Given that most of the housing systems are structured under the concept of a binary gender, that there's a male and female, for folks that don't fit into those categories, finding housing is challenging, said their Office of Residential Life. The policy change was recommended by student councils last year, and housing officials could draft the policy to be implemented as soon as next fall. Where is this heading? Folks, I can't even read the details of the very perverse sex education that is now being offered through the New York City, that's being offered and mandated now in the state of California. I can't even read what they're dealing with, folks. It is so obnoxious. It is so perverse. Where is this heading? Listen to this. Several students at a Hartford high school expressed horror, left the auditorium when two male members of a city-funded school shared a passionate kiss on stage. School officials said they opted against informing parents about the event ahead of time, saying that the students needed exposure to homosexuality, and hailed the chaotic reaction as a victory for raising the gay issue. Folks, we'd like to hear your reaction to this. Should we repeal the Defense of Marriage Act? What does America have to say? Our number, 800-733-9829. 1-800-733-9829. You're listening to Crosstalk on the VCY America Network.
Perhaps you're a person that is active on the issues of today. And while these things are necessary, there is nothing more important than your personal relationship to Jesus Christ. Have you met Him as your personal Savior? All the issues we face on earth pale in comparison to the real issue of your relationship to God. What really matters is eternity, and we hope that you're ready for it. I'd like to send you a brochure that is absolutely free. This will help you to consider this very important matter. It's entitled, Where Will You Spend Eternity? It's brief, it's to the point, and it helps you to understand the urgency of having a personal relationship to Jesus Christ. If you'd like to receive a free copy of this pamphlet, right now pick up your phone and call 800-729-9829 and ask for the brochure. That's 800-729-9829. Call now.
You're listening to Crosstalk on VCY America. We're talking about a vote that's coming up this Thursday. Folks, you've got time to contact your senators regarding this vote that's in the Senate Judiciary Committee. It's taking place at 10 a.m. Eastern Time as they convene for their meeting in the Dirksen office room, room 226. They're in Washington, D.C. They're going to be voting on S-598, this committee, the Judiciary Committee. If this committee passes it, it will go before the full Senate for a vote. This is something that will repeal the Defense of Marriage Act. I was just telling you about this story before I get to your calls because there's more to it. This Hartford High School, and this is where this is heading, folks. It is going to be more and more and more assaults against the family, assaults against your children. Here again, several students, it's Hartford High School, and LifeSite News had the story. Students expressed horror, left the auditorium. 2 male members of the city-funded school shared a passionate kiss on the stage. School officials said they opted against, listen parents, they opted against informing parents about the event ahead of time, saying that the students needed exposure to homosexuality and hailed the chaotic reaction as a victory for raising the gay issue. The kiss occurred during Hartford Public High School's production of Xana Don't. It's a play depicting a world in which homosexuality is normative and heterosexuals take up the role of outcast. School officials had told students that homosexual displays of affection would be featured in the play, and many asked to be excused. One school official, cited by the current Nursing Academy principal David Chambers, said that he had considered sending an opt-out letter to parents before changing his mind. The school reportedly received a number of phone calls from parents following the incident. The play, available to students free of charge, was a joint effort between Connecticut Gay Youth Group, the True Colors, and a local youth leadership program funded in part by the city of Hartford. Chambers said the students needed to learn empathy toward homosexuals and exposure to things that would make them uncomfortable. Our kids aren't there yet, said Chambers. He also suggested that the reaction of disgust was a good sign, indicating a release of students' inner conflict about homosexuality. Folks, this is where it's heading, and it's not going to stop there. In Quebec, Canada, folks, they're giving $7 million to combat negative attitudes against homosexuality, government money. The government has explicitly labeled those who consider homosexuality morally wrong as homophobic. Here we have also one last story here, and I'm going to your calls. This is coming from the UK. A housing manager been demoted, his salary slashed. Why? Because he criticized a controversial new gay rights law on his private Facebook website page. Called in for a disciplinary hearing. He had served many, many years with the organization, with the governmental body. This is his private page on Facebook. He's worked 18 years for them. And as a result, because of his tenure, they allowed him to continue on, but they downgraded his salary from £35,000 a year to £21,000 a year. Now, in U.S. dollars, that's about $56,129, demoted to $33,677, because he criticized homosexuality on his private Facebook page. That's where it's heading. Folks, the vote's this Thursday morning. Let's hear what you have to say. Our number 800-733-9829. Let's go to Alabama. Liz, you're on the air.
Hi.
Hi.
I asked you guys a question. I'm a post-operative transsexual woman. Do you know what that is, first of all?
You're a post-operative?
Transsexual woman.
Okay, what is your biology, ma'am?
I am female. That's what it says on my birth certificate.
Okay.
Okay. Should I be allowed to marry?
Yes, people can marry, yes. If you're female, you have the right to marry a male.
Okay. I'm hearing a lot of criticism of transgender people, and I see a lot of conflation with the marriage issue. Do you understand the difference between what a transgender person is and who a transsexual person is?
Absolutely. Both are an abomination, yes.
Okay, both are an abomination.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Do you understand there's a basis in biology for this?
No, ma'am, I do not. I do not understand that there's a basis in biology for it.
Of course there is.
No, there's not.
Gender by itself is very fluid, especially in the animal species.
No, we're talking about human beings, ma'am.
And
it is not fluid. It is not fluid. One is born male or female, and to change that is to go against nature itself. Tom in Mitchell, South Dakota, you're on the air.
All right. Hello. My thought is, if they want to have this thing approved, why don't they come up with their own name, their own handle, instead of attacking something that already has a name and a meaning, and then set it before the country, and let's see what happens. To me, that would be a more courageous way to go than tearing down something that's already there.
Well, Tom, you see what happens is they do this state after state, and people overwhelmingly pass a defense of marriage. They want. I mean, every state this has come up for a vote, we are seeing the people side that's saying marriage is between one man and one woman. And this is why so many times they will go to the courts in order to see this overturned. This is why, we see that happen in that regard. But the people have spoken. Surveys across the nation show that people want this to take place. But the president is certainly opposed to marriage being defined as a male and a female. We are seeing now the actions that have taken place through Senator Feinstein, and your senator is going to be voting on our senators across the nation on Thursday morning.
Well, I think that America needs to wake up and understand that we have been so lackadaisical when it comes to voting that unless we start to step up to the plate, unless we start to honestly vote God in everything, in every decision, I don't care who the person is, be it Democrat, Tea Party, Republican, whatever, vote God. And you can't go wrong. Be courageous, America, goodness sakes. Let's stand up for what we know is truth so that we're not caught up in the things that are going to put us into even further bondage.
Yeah,
thanks for a good program.
Thanks for your call here today. It is just a fact of nature. I've never heard this before, that your sexuality is fluid. Maybe today you're going to run off into this. You're going to be a male today, a female tomorrow, and maybe 2 weeks from now a male again. My. Okay, Milwaukee, Martha, you're on the air.
Yes, I totally agree as far as standing up for what we believe in, which is under God. That can be the only way, and there's no such thing as we were made a certain way, as far as whether we are meant to be men just because, of wanting it to be something else. So I'm totally against same-sex marriage, and I'm a true believer in God's laws. And I think that our nation should stand up.
Well, Martha, according to the governor of New York, you're anti-American.
Anti-American?
Mm-hmm.
Well, according to God, I am an American.
Thank you for your call today.
Okay, God bless you.
Bye-bye now. Illinois, Dorothy, you're on the air.
Well, God is the boss. He created this world, and He created marriage, and He made woman from man. And He's the final authority. And the people that are gay are also told in the Bible they've turned themselves over to a reprobate mind, and they're in terrible sin, and they'll go to hell for that. And if we as a country don't stand up for God and we vote against this DOMA law, we're telling God and the world that God doesn't count, that we are no better than He does, and for heaven's sakes, they'll surely go to hell. Where's their brain? You better stand up for God. He's the authority. And people voting against DOMA, like I said before, is voting against the wisdom of God. And we've got to stand up for what God says.
Thank you for your thoughts here today. And as we look, Mark chapter 10, verse 6, from the beginning of creation, God made them male and female. Folks, it doesn't say anything about fluidity there. He made them male and female. Janesville, Wisconsin, Dave, you're on the air.
Thank you. I appreciate your program. I'm thinking that when God created man, there was plurals and singulars in the image of God, created He them. And this whole thing is really an attack on the Trinity, not an attack on the traditional family or anything else. But first of all, attack on the Trinity. And so when we pray, Thy kingdom come, Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven, we're praying that God would inhabit the earth with people and families that look like Trinitarian God sitting in the heavens.
Okay, I'm not quite sure where we're all going with that, but thank you for your thoughts here today. Our number, 800-733-9829. Folks, again, the vote is this coming Thursday. The majority office for the committee, for the Democratic majority, is 202-224-7703. That's 224-7703. The minority office, representing the Republicans, is 202-224-5225. We're doing this program today because if you find those numbers are busy today, you have time tomorrow. You have time on Wednesday to make those phone calls, because pretty well first thing Thursday morning, this Judiciary Committee is going to be getting together and casting their vote on the repeal of the Defense of Marriage Act. We've read through the list of senators who make up that committee. We've read through the sponsors of the committee. And now, folks, as a watchman on the wall, we're saying, you know, the danger is afoot here. And now you've got the information. What will you do with it? Let's hear from you today, 800-733-9829 to, let's see, Lee, you're next in Wisconsin. Go ahead.
Hello?
Yes.
Yeah, I think I know why that these people become homosexuals. It's because Jesus is a false name for Satan and the fallen name.
I'm sorry, Lee. I'm just not going to take that, entertain your call there. Crivets, Wisconsin. Brad, you're on the air. Just so follow our topic here today. Go ahead, Brad.
Hi. I tell you, these liberals and radical politicians can't get sinful enough. They're always squawking about discrimination and rights and all this. Look, we have the same rights. No one can marry a member of the same sex, the way things are now federally. Mm-hmm. And all of us can marry a member of the opposite sex. Therefore, right, we have the same rights.
There's no discrimination.
That's right. And regarding this fluidity of gender, you can pump someone full of hormones and do all kinds of unnecessary surgery on them all you want. The fact is, women have 2 X chromosomes, men have 1 X and 1 Y, and that's not going to change. There is no fluidity of gender.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Brad. Appreciate your call.
Thank you.
Carl in Delton, you're on the air.
Yes, a lot of people evade the issue that being homosexual is satanic, and those that support the satanic movement should be out of office. They shouldn't have the right to hold a position.
Well, you're calling from Wisconsin, Carl, and one of your senators sits on this committee, Herb Kohl. As a matter of fact, as of this day, he is a co-sponsor of this legislation to repeal marriage as between one man and one woman.
Well, he's going to be out of office soon anyway. I guess he's resigning, so I guess the call might maybe brighten his eyes to the Holy Spirit.
Thanks for your thoughts here today, Carl. Our number, 800-733-9829 to Huron, South Dakota. John, you're on the air.
Hi, Jim. How are you?
Fine, thank you.
Listen, Jim, I called before you went to the callers. I called Senator John Thune. I'm from South Dakota.
Yeah.
John Thune's office and Congresswoman Kristi Noem's office. John Thune's office said that Senator Thune did not have an opinion on this as of yet.
Wow.
Anyway, Kristi Noem, I was told by the fellow who answered the phone that this is not the reason Kristi got into office, to vote on something like this, Jim.
Well,
do you believe that?
If this legislation comes before the Congress, it's sitting in a committee right now on the House side, but she's going to be compelled to have to cast her
You better believe
vote
it,
on
Jim.
Wow.
Okay.
Thank you for the call here, John.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
You're listening to Crosstalk on VCY. We're going to take a quick 60-second break and then to more of your calls as Crosstalk returns.
For the Worldview Weekend Minute, I'm Brandon House. Our website's worldviewweekend.com. Today, contemplative prayer, breath prayers, centering prayers, soaking prayers, whatever you want to call it, is being promoted even inside, quote, evangelical churches, end quote. In fact, Richard Foster, a writer who teaches contemplative prayer, talks about how you can actually literally encounter Jesus. Is this biblical? No, it's not biblical at all. Nowhere in the Scriptures do we see that we are to physically encounter Jesus through our prayer life. Nowhere do we see that we're to enter into the silence, enter into the quietness, and encounter God, or encounter Jesus. In fact, 1 Peter 1 verse 8 does not say whom we see whenever we want through visualization. It says, whom having not seen you love, though you do not see him, yet believing you rejoice with joy inexpressible, full of glory, receiving the end of your faith, the salvation of your souls. End quote. Christians are not commanded to try to physically see Jesus.
Sharing vital information. This is Crosstalk on the VCY American Network. We're talking about a bill in the U.S. Senate, Senate Bill 598, S598. It is a bill that they're calling it the Respect for Marriage Act, but it does anything but that. What it does, it repeals the Defense of Marriage Act so that we no longer as a nation under federal statute would say that marriage is between one man and one woman. I'm appalled. This call that came in from South Dakota. Senator Thune doesn't know his position on this matter. Doesn't know whether marriage is between a man and a woman or not. Those of you in South Dakota, don't you think you better get on the horn and contact your senator and help him understand the biology aspect, the historical aspect to this question? The main Senate switchboard number is 202-224-3121. I've given you all. I don't have time to go through all the individual numbers for the committee members. We'll have those posted up on our Crosstalk website here later today at crosstalkamerica.com, where you can have access to those phone numbers. But, folks, you can get on the phone right now and contact your senators. These committee members are voting Thursday morning, and you have the opportunity to let your voice be heard. Next to Jean calling in from Racine. You're on the air.
Yes, hi. Appreciate your show. I just wanted to say that many years ago, our country was successful. We were prosperous. We were really in good shape. That was because we were, for the most part, trying to obey God's laws. Now, people are being indoctrinated into this, that, and the other thing, and they're all going along with it thinking, oh, goody, this is so cute. They're not realizing what they're doing. They are desensitizing children. They are changing people's thinking, and it's so much easier to do what you want to do, you know. I'm thinking that these people whose children are now going to school and being treated in a manner that is exposing them to things that we don't believe as Christians, that they ought to maybe start some sort of, not just some sort of way to start suing the government for their weird outlook. I don't know.
Yeah,
Isn't there something they can do like that?
Yeah, you see, you're referring to the play in Hartford where they were going to inform the parents that this was coming up, but decided against it so that students needed to have exposure to homosexuality.
Exactly. And if I were young enough and my children were going to school, I would be livid. I would be so angry that they dared to do something like this with my child.
Thanks for your call here today.
Okay, thank you.
And to Darlene in Arena, you're on the air.
Yeah, I agree with the one lady who called before, and it's this lady too. But there's another thing. No matter if man passes this law or not, it's still going to be an abomination to the Lord. It will always be an abomination to the Lord.
You're right. Good point. Thank you. Debbie, you're on the air.
Hi, I definitely have to say myself that I do agree with those facts that the young lady mentioned, but I also wanted to just comment on how I really feel bad for the senators in each of the states that are representing the wrong thing as far as when it comes to this same-sex marriage. That's just ridiculous. I don't know if they realize who's responsible for this world being in existence, but the Almighty God Almighty is extremely disappointed in what they're doing, and they're going to have to see their maker for that, even if they try to pass this law. Another thing about the United States of America, this country has been so built on, unfortunately, so many lies, so now they're all coming out, and they're coming out in ways that a person couldn't even imagine. God hates all of this same-sex marriage, and as she said, the poor children shouldn't even have to suffer this, but he's just doing things to make us have to get on our knees more and more and more. We need to stay on our knees.
Amen.
And thank you for your show. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Debbie, for your call today. to Ty. Go ahead, Ty. You're on the air.
Yeah, hi, Jim. Thanks. An earlier caller mentioned the X chromosome and the Y chromosome about fluidity, and I wanted to also comment on that, too, is that man versus animal has reason and also has speech and ability to reason. And they don't that's the difference there. And then the final thing I wanted to say is that I heard a minister say this, that he said that society has hit bottom when the virtue of society is considered tolerance, and when the sin of society is considered intolerance and judging.
Thank you so much. You said it well. Appreciate your call. The other comment that was made that man is animal. Folks, don't buy that argument as well. Man is a unique, distinct creation from God, apart from animals. Man is unique in his creation and made in the image of God. Animals are not made in the image of God. Matter of fact, last week in Crosstalk, we shared the story about PETA. Remember, they've got this lawsuit filed saying that it's unconstitutional. They're applying the U.S. Constitution to whales that are up at SeaWorld. Filing a lawsuit saying, no, you're against the Constitution. The SeaWorld is opposing the Constitution because their whales are in slavery, and so they're filing on behalf of the plaintiffs, the orca whales. Folks, this is how bizarre this is getting. Let's see, quickly to Jeff in Idaho. You're on the air, Jeff.
I just wanted to, you'd say a senator had said it's un-American to stand homosexuality or to have an anti-homosexuality.
I'm sorry, you're trailing off there, Jeff. I can't hear you.
You said there was a senator in New York, right?
No, no, it wasn't the senator. It was the, was it the mayor? No.
The mayor, okay, Bloomberg, right?
Yeah. I'm sorry, not mayor, the governor.
Governor, okay.
Andrew Cuomo.
I guess my point is what he's saying is it's discriminatory to not accept homosexualities, but where do we draw that line? Is it discriminatory to not allow bestiality or polygamy or, there's just, it's like, where do you draw that line? If you're going to change the definition of what marriage means for 10,000 years and is a religious and sanctified institution, where are you going to then say that discriminatory line crosses? Should we also allow free-for-all for multiple people marrying wives like you see on that Sister Wives show? I mean, it gets really ridiculous when you say you can't have a view other than to agree with what is secularism.
Appreciate your call. You've made a good point. And our closing theme is just starting up. Apologize to others online here, but let me quickly say, folks, the vote takes place in the Senate Judiciary Committee this Thursday morning. The numbers will be on our website here, crosstalkamerica.com. All the individual phone numbers. The majority office is 202-224-7703. The minority office, 202-224-5225. Folks, thanks for joining us today here on Crosstalk. Tell somebody else and make them informed on this issue as well. Thanks for joining us.
You've been listening to Crosstalk via satellite and the internet from VCY America. Views expressed may or may not be those of this station. For a CD of today's program, send a donation of $6 or more to VCY Take Ministry, 3434 West Kilbourne Avenue, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, 53208, or download by RSS or podcast from crosstalkamerica.com. And join us again for Crosstalk.